I had a hunch back in 2008 when I started my foundation in Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles. I had 65 kids from a school that I adopted, and I wanted them to go to Ivy League colleges, but I didn't want them to graduate with debt and a diploma and no job waiting for them. So we surrounded the kids with a computer science skill set and a robotics skill set, and that program has now grown to serve over 14,000 students in Los Angeles.
Alex, I'd like to bring you in for a second and say, what do you make of what will.i.am said?
No, it's incredibly critical. Back in 2018, I decided to come together with a number of people from Africa and some from Latin America. We put together what's on screen there called Alliance for AI, Alliance for Africa's Intelligence, which was set up to help disadvantaged communities not get left behind during technology revolutions. AI being the one we're happening right now, and then we're going to have more. Think about quantum computing. So what can be done to prevent those groups being left behind? So, as you say, there's the digital divide, which we started to talk about with the internet. But now with AI, it's just going to get so much larger. I like to use simple examples that help me understand. I think about, for example, a math exam, right? You're having a math exam, and then you then say all the Americans or all the people from Asia, China, and Europe have access to super fast calculators for the exam. But then you say everyone else from Latin America and from Africa has to do the math with their head. How are they supposed to compete, right? So that is extremely, it's not even possible. And so with our organization, we started to focus on a number of spaces, policy, working with political leaders in Africa and even the Caribbean, education, and infrastructure. And through the course of today, happy to share more on the rest of it. But there's one story I want to share. In 2019, in one of the AI clubs that we empower young people to create, there was a girl from Ghana who, after spending 2 to 3 months looking through the curriculum and seeing examples of other people, other African women who look like her build AI, she said, she was 14 years old, by the way. And so she said she did not believe that she thought AI was only getting built by white men and Chinese men. She didn't think that there was any woman building AI, and that was transformational for her. And now she has a scholarship and she's going to school in the US for that.
Brian, would you tell us quickly about your educational part of it all? I mean, do you think that that's going to help break down some of these divides?
Well, that's why I came out of retirement, because I saw a challenge that needed to be solved. Look, 6 years ago, I spoke at the Unintended Consequences of Technology conference in Silicon Valley, and I predicted that we're going to lose somewhere between 1 to 2 billion jobs around the world by 2030. Everybody said I was crazy, it's going to be way further, and we don't need to worry. And the mistake I made is I thought it was going to be mostly blue collar jobs. I thought it was going to be retail workers and fast food workers and warehouse workers. And those people are losing their jobs. We're losing those jobs at scale right now. This isn't the future of work, this is the present of work. What we didn't know is we're also losing jobs in accounting, in law, in art, in music, in copywriting, and a number of white-collar jobs as well now. And so the challenge is this. Look, in 2009, we had like a, 8-9% unemployment rate, and the global economy came to a standstill. Back in the late 20s, we had the Great Depression. We had a, 25% unemployment rate, and we had tent cities mass suffering. What happens if we have a 30, 40, 50% unemployment rate? When people can't feed their children, they can't provide a roof over their heads. You're talking about massive issues around war, crime, and instability, right? And so when you think about the people that need to be retrained, the last 3 industrial revolutions that we had 1 to 2 generations to retrain the population. So it wasn't the factory workers that started working in office buildings, it was their children and their grandchildren. This time, it's the same people themselves that within 5 to 10 years need to be completely reskilled. Now, the challenge is our entire education system is not prepared to take on this challenge. It barely works just to educate people that are K through 12, and we still lose 80% of the people that try to go through the education system and it doesn't work for them. And so how do we then retrain the population when they're adults, they have families, they have children, they have responsibilities, they don't have 8 hours a day to sit in class? How do you solve that problem? Now, it turns out that because of the work that's happened over the past 20 years in AI, and AI is partly to blame for this, companies like Alphabet and Meta and ByteDance and their subsidiaries have invested tens of billions of dollars, hired armies of psychologists, psychiatrists, and NLP professionals to figure out how to capture your dopamine feedback loops, how to get you to be constantly addicted to your device. So as you're sitting there talking to someone, you check your Facebook. When we're thinking of the biggest competition for education, so I have an education company, we use AI obviously to enable people to learn 3 to 5 times faster than traditional education. But this reminds me of a conversation I had a number of years ago, 6-7 years ago. I was at a wedding in the south of France at a castle, and I happened to be sitting across from the CFO of SoulCycle, and I was just trying to make conversation. So I asked her, who are your competitors? I was living in New York at the time. I was like, is it Barry's Boot Camp? Is it, Hollywood Fitness? Who are your biggest competitors? And I'll never forget what she said. She said, no, Bryan, our biggest competitors are Facebook and Netflix and the bar down the street. Because when people are gonna go work out, they're not deciding whether they're gonna go to SoulCycle or Hollywood Fitness or somewhere else. They're deciding whether they're gonna sit on their couch. And so when we think of education, we need to radically transform the way we think. It's not, are they consuming educational content? It's, when they make a decision to study, are they getting distracted? Are they getting their attention robbed from them so that we can sell advertising and sell more widgets? Or can people regain the power over their attention? Can we use these same technologies, artificial intelligence and cognitive science, to empower people and train people? Now, the final thing I'll say on this is, to Alex's point and to Will's point, and Will has done a lot of amazing work in Africa and around the world on this, we have a massive opportunity for the fastest growing population in the world, which is Africa, and in some other places like LATAM and other underserved communities around the world, to provide education to them, right? So they were able to leapfrog traditional infrastructure spend on things like telco and energy and other things. And so there's an opportunity to leapfrog the traditional models and jump ahead and retrain entire populations in technology sectors and in other areas to grow those communities from the ground up, rather than having those communities constantly be waiting for those philanthropic dollars that are going to sprinkle down, which ultimately we've seen, like when they give shoes to people in Africa, it destroys their local cobbler ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
And so how do we actually empower them? So
there's a lot of folks that are afraid of the field of AI, and the folks that are afraid of the field of AI are those that have been sitting in some lap of comfort. There's folks that have been enduring the toughest obstacles that life has thrown at them. And AI is not the cause of that. But AI can be the solution for them to solve their problem themselves. They don't have to wait for some cavalry to come. They could wrap their hands around this technology, have normal types of conversations with text to code or text to strategy, text to problem, conversation to problem, something to give them strategy to solve it and apply themselves and solve it themselves. And that is empowering. That's what I hope the technology is used for, is for folks to solve the problems that have been ignored by people.
This is literally what we've been building for 6 years. This is why I came out of retirement, to solve exactly this problem with artificial intelligence, to level the playing field for everybody. Look, I lived in a refugee camp when I was younger. And so I was able to use the education system in the United States to be able to catapult forward. And after I retired my parents and retired a bunch of people in my family, I was like, what problem can I actually solve to impact 1 billion people in a meaningful way? So to your point, there are people working on that. And we're not taking people's data to sell for advertising like some people choose to do, because I think there's better ways of using AI.
Yeah, I'll add to what both of you have just mentioned, especially with the whole concept of empowering people to solve their own problems. I think that's like, to me at least, that's the most important thing to work on. It's like, how do you empower people to solve their own problems using whatever tools they have in front of them? And AI is one of the most powerful tools. So how can you help them get to a place where they're building their own AI solutions, right? So this is a homework for people in the room, because I see your faces. Many of you are very powerful, influential people. AI, one of the critical ingredients for building AI solutions is compute, right? And to simplify compute, think of it as a computer, having a very powerful computer. Without a powerful computer, it can take you, say, 5 days to train an AI model, right? You wait for it. After 5 days, you see it's not working, you make a change in your code, and you wait another 5 days, right? It can be that painful. That's what it is like for parts of the world that don't have access to super fast computers. And even within the US, there's communities in the US that don't have access to computers fast enough. So people in the room, I'd love for you to think of solutions and how you want to solve that problem. Their solutions range from things like figuring out with cloud credits, how do you make different communities aware of cloud credits that are available for them. There are supercomputers in America that have excess capacity. How do you help underserved communities be aware of those? Like your groups, like how do we plug your groups to supercomputers that I'm aware of that were built through NVIDIA, right? And the bigger one for us with our nonprofits in Africa, well, there's no supercomputers there. We're now raising funds, the group who's driving, I'm just on the board now, to build the first NGO cloud in Africa to kickstart and jumpstart that innovation.
Maybe a new ism is on its way. Maybe AI is governed by humanism. Maybe people are afraid that it's out going to create us, but it's not going to outlove us. It's not going to out-empathy us. It's not going to outlift each other up. It's not going to out-human us. We've been so blinded by this money chase that we don't even see the humanity. And maybe a new ism is around the corner. And that is how to love unconditionally, how to empathize without any reward at the end. And maybe it's going to take this thing to catapult us to a realm where, because we're competitive by nature. And maybe this thing is coming, that we spawned ourselves to catapult us to an age of enlightenment, an age of empathy and love and understanding.
Well, I think that's a great call to action. So let's hear it for the amazing panel. And